Joe Biden made a rare speech from the Oval Office following the assassination attempt against Donald Trump at a campaign rally this weekend. Former President Trump was hit by a bullet in his right ear, but he was not severely wounded. Speaking Sunday, Biden said it was time to lower the temperature in the campaign, saying politics must never be a political battlefield.
Here in America, everyone must be treated with dignity and respect, and hate must have no safe harbor. Here in America, we need to get out of our silos, where we only listen to those with whom we agree, where misinformation is rampant, where foreign actors fan the flames of our division to shape the outcomes consistent with their interests, not ours. Let's remember, here in America, while unity is the most elusive of goals right now, nothing is more important for us now than standing together.
The Secret Service, meanwhile, is facing scrutiny after that shooting at the Trump rally in Pennsylvania. Investigators are now looking into how the suspected gunman managed to climb onto a rooftop unnoticed and was allowed to shoot despite being spotted by people in the crowd. Shirley Sitbon has more.
The question of who tried to assassinate Donald Trump was resolved early on in the investigation. 20-year-old Thomas Matthew Crooks from suburban Pittsburgh. But the questions on why he did it remain unclear. Crooks worked in a nursing home, had no criminal record. He was a registered Republican, but had also donated a few dollars to a liberal platform. So far, investigators have found no threatening messages or underlying ideology on his social media accounts. Former schoolmates describe Crooks as a loner.
I started seeing pictures online of him, and we were like, wow, this is insane. He was bullied, sat alone at lunch, is pretty much that. You don't want to have that first thought in your head, like, he's a little off, is he going to do something?
It's with an AR-15 like this one that Crooks tried to kill the former president. One man was killed, 3 others were wounded, including Donald Trump. It's Crooks' father who had legally purchased the firearm. Crooks managed to arrive extremely close to the stage, some 120 meters. Investigators are trying to determine how he gained access to the roof at a particularly dangerous spot. Several witnesses say they had seen the shooter and alerted police. The Secret Service spokesman told the New York Times the gunman was not camped out on the roof. The FBI believes Crooks acted alone and is investigating the shooting as a potential act of domestic terrorism.
Donald Trump, meanwhile, is already back on the campaign trail. He is now in Milwaukee for this week's Republican National Convention, where he is set to be confirmed as the party's presidential candidate. Speaking to a reporter on his plane Sunday, Trump said he would have been dead if he had not slightly turned his head to look at a chart. He is now reportedly rewriting his convention speech to talk more about bringing unity back to America. Well, for more on all of this, let's bring in U.S. politics specialist Scott Lucas, who joins me from Birmingham. Scott, the shock of this assassination attempt is going to be at the front of many delegates' minds there at the Republican convention this week, as well as many Americans' minds. Do you think that Trump's close call will persuade him to soften his edges a bit in this speech?
I think that's the key question, not just for this week. I think it's the key question all the way to November, indeed, for the future of the U.S. And the reason why I say that is that Donald Trump has risen as a politician. He's risen as a public figure because he's played upon the politics of division, even the politics of violence. You know, this is a man who has called for violence against hecklers at his rallies. He's called for violence against demonstrators such as Black Lives Matter. He's called for violence against migrants and against asylum seekers. He's called for violence against the media and violence against his, quote, enemies. You know, does he change after that shooting? And I'm still hesitant to say he has because of the immediate reaction that he had. Just after that bullet grazed his ear, he gets back up, he clears space amongst the Secret Service around him. He throws that fist up in the air and he shouts to the crowd, "Fight fight, fight. Now, those are very similar to the words that he issued on January 6, 2021, when he called on his supporters to fight, 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 and march on the Capitol to prevent the transfer of power to Joe Biden. Has Donald Trump really changed from that figure who tried to hold office despite the 2020 election, who has continued to insult people and to preach division since then? Or has he been reined in, either personally or by his staff, not just in this speech this week, but for the next 4 months?
So, given that, what kind of effect do you think that this assassination attempt will have on America?
You know, a lot of people are talking about what does this mean for the election? You know, will this boost Trump? Will it give him even a landslide? Could he possibly actually be hurt by the fact that he could overreact to it? I don't want to go that route because I think this wider question you put is, what does America do now? And the problem here is and it was there even before last weekend, but it's twofold. The first is that you have issues which are crowded out in America in the most serious election since 1865 by spectacle. And I'm talking about issues like women's rights, including abortion rights. I'm talking about climate change, healthcare, education, the economy, immigration, foreign policy, including Russia's invasion of Ukraine and the Middle East. None of these issues are getting a look in initially because the media were simply going, old Joe, old Joe, old Joe. And now they're talking about what does Trump look like? What is this man going to be like? Almost like this superhero. Until you get a return to a discussion of what matters most to America and to the world on a day-to-day basis, it's going to feed the cult of personality. And again, just a reminder for your viewers out there, this man who narrowly survived the political violence is a man who has said that if he returns to the White House in January 2025, he will act like a dictator on day one. He will seek retribution against his enemies. So it's not just an election we're talking about here. We're talking about the future of the U.S. system.
Well, what about the very key issue of gun control? I mean, here we have a Republican presidential candidate now almost losing his life to a gun shooting incident. Could this have any effect at all on how Republicans, how the right in America sees gun control?
I'll say the G word. Look, I've done interviews for years after mass shootings in which people who were not a presidential candidate were killed. I've done it after Las Vegas. I did it after Dayton. I've done it after Buffalo. I've done it after the shootings down in Texas. I did it after Pittsburgh. And I can tell you that the same narrative plays out, which is that people can talk about thoughts and prayers. But at the end of the day, many people, many of them are Republicans, will come back to the fact of saying, oh, no, 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 we cannot infringe an individual's right to own a gun. This might be a mental health issue. This might be an issue about what they see on media, but in no way do we make this an issue about the proliferation of guns. And that's why you haven't seen many leading politicians. I can't think of a single leading Republican who has come out in the past 36 hours and say, you know, we really need to consider whether people should be able to have semi-automatic rifles, such as Thomas Crooks, the man who fired at the president and who killed one person and injured two others in the crowd.
Absolutely. Scott, earlier you were talking about how we were all focused on old Joe just a few days ago. I mean, what do you think about Biden's response of all of this? And what's the likelihood he will be pushed aside now, like many Democrats were hoping for just a few days ago?
I mean, I think the response he made was the essential response, and not just from Biden. I have to say from other politicians as well, from other Democrats like President Obama, from other Republicans like President Bush, and from some current legislators. And that is, political violence has no place in our society. Unfortunately, by the way, some Trumpists are not going that way. They're going with blaming the left, blaming Biden, blaming media, blaming the Justice Department. In terms of Biden's future, if you had talked to me last week, in fact, I did talk to you last week, and I actually said, you know, Joe Biden probably will step aside as the Democratic candidate this week. The pressure was just too great on him because of the narrative that he could not make it to November. Now, as I speak to you, I think he is almost locked in as the Democratic candidate because at a time when there is the call for unity, including Joe Biden calling for unity, you don't replace your president. Therefore, you don't replace your nominee. And the Democratic window to act, even despite the fact that I think Biden will find it difficult to defeat Trump. The Democratic window to act was really only before their national convention, August 19th. So unless he has another significant failure like he did in the debate at the end of June, I think it is going to be Biden versus Trump.
Okay. All right, Scott, thank you for that, for the very latest on all the twists and turns in this incredible U.S. election that we're watching very closely for you here on France 24. Scott Lucas, thank you very much.